I changed the title a little bit, so still it's the same topic, but it's chest injuries and novel ways to diagnose and treat them. Just need to see if the clicker works, and it does. So this is the title. I'm going to talk to you about this, and first of all, just say something about my background. I'm a colleague to Dr. Lindner that just gave the speech. I work as an air ambulance doctor here in Stavanger. But I'm actually giving you the talk today as the CEO of Prometheus Medical Nordic, which is a new established medtech company. And that's why I'm going to give you this overview. So I just want to start with a disclaimer. Of course, some of the slides that I show you are actually products that is developed by the company. So the outline for my talk is to talk a little bit more about the epidemiology of chest injuries and how we can make correct diagnosis and how we can treat our patients better. Before I start, again, I would just, same as Thomas, like to show you a video on the kind of office that we have or the environment where we work. So this is a video showing the air ambulance service in Norway. So if we get a dispatch, we will normally land close to the patient, and we will, as you see, work together with ambulance service, fire department, police department, and try to do as much intervention at the scene as possible. But we actually have a hurry. We need to get the patient to the hospital. Sometimes the weather is not with us. It's cold. We need to, be sure that the patient doesn't freeze, and as quickly as possible, again, try to get back to where definitive treatment can be done. So that's just a quick video showing, kind of the challenges that we face in our work. And when we say chest injuries, is that a serious problem? Yes, it's really common. About 1/4 of each trauma patient has an injury to the chest. Many of them are actually life-threatening, so you need to handle them. And the good thing is that it's actually quite easy set of procedures that needs to be done to help saving lives. So that's the background for this. So we talk about the deadly dozen. That's like a list of potential deadly injuries that you can get inside the chest. Of course, we have the airways inside, so if the airways is blocked or you have a disruption of the airway, that could be really hurting you. And the same is if you have some other injuries to the diaphragm, that actually helps you breathe. And also the lung can puncture, and that's what we call a pneumothorax if you have a punctured lung. I'm going to talk more about that. You can also have a massive haemothorax where blood collects inside the chest cavity. And of course the heart is there. You can have heart injuries and also injuries to the larger vessels inside the chest. So a lot of structures are critical and potentially damaged if you are in an accident. So I'm going to concentrate on how we can diagnose pneumothorax and haemothorax. And for you that is non-medical, a pneumothorax is seen here on your left side. It's where the lung here, you can see it's punctured. So air actually, comes into the chest cavity, and the kind of lung shrinks, and it doesn't function that well. So this is the normal lung on that side. On your right side here, you can see a haemothorax where blood actually collects around the lung. As you see here, again, the lung is collapsed. And of course, you can go into hemorrhagic shock based on the volume of blood that collects inside the chest. So these are two common injuries that we see in our patients. I actually looked into these numbers, and we have a great trauma registry at Stavanger University Hospital. So we looked at a 10-year data material where we found that during those 10 years, we had 4,500 traumas. So it's around 450 to 500 each year. It's not a huge number if you look at hospitals abroad. I think Oveland in Norway has around 1,500, 2,000, which is the largest trauma hospital in Norway. But still, it's a kind of decent number, around 400 to 500 per year. And if we divide those patients, we can see that around 1,200 of them have chest injuries. Again, you can see the number, around 1 in 4 patients will come into the hospital with injuries in their chest. And if you look at the two mechanisms, the penetrating one being stab wounds or gunshot wounds, that has only been 51 in 10 years. So the majority is blunt trauma. Typical is fall accidents or car accidents coming in. So we are actually looking into our material now in a study that we will publish soon. So I'm not sure if you see a problem here, but this is the old-fashioned way of examining the chest. Of course, there are, if you only base your diagnosis on a clinical examination, that's not always accurate. And that means that you will sometimes miss internal injuries. And that's just based that we can't actually look into the body. So just by looking at the patient on the outside, you will miss internal injuries. And that's why you need to have some adjuncts, something that can help you. And this adjunct was actually developed 200 years ago. This is the first stethoscope that were invented by a Frenchman called Laennec. And of course, it's helped the medical profession for many years, so it's been developed into a better product. But still, it's like a 200-year-old invention. And of course, just by listening to the chest, you are able to detect more of these injuries. But there is a problem anyway, because sometimes you are in an environment outside, there can be a lot of noise, it can be difficult to actually listen. You need to be in a quiet room to be able to do this. So what I have done is to start using point-of-care ultrasonography, which is actually, as you can see here, me holding a small pocket machine. I can bring it to the patient, I can examine the patient inside a helicopter, and now just instead of listening to the chest, I can actually look inside the chest. And that makes sense, because then I can look at internal injuries and examine the patient. So here you can see a massive haemothorax where blood collects around the lung, and I'm able to detect this with this small machine. It only takes seconds to actually detect these injuries. And of course, as my colleague Dr. Lindo said, some even take it a step further, where they put actually even more advanced machines in. Here you can see this is an ambulance in the United States where they have a complete CT machine inside. And this is the CT ambulance for the Norwegian Air Ambulance, where they have a CT for the head. So more and more advanced technologies are now moving outside of the hospital as well. And the reason is that the equipment, the weight goes down, and it's more accessible for the healthcare personnel. And they're even now looking into pushing this machine inside an helicopter, as Thomas mentioned. So more advanced thing is coming. What we are doing is also looking into new technologies. So this is what you see, this is like a belt that is strapped around the chest. And what's new with this belt is that it contains sensors inside. And the sensor is not ultrasound, because ultrasound is mechanical waves, but it's actually electromagnetic waves, similar to the signals that you comes from your phone. So these kind of signals, again, can also penetrate into the chest. So all these sensors are strapped around. One sensor is sending out a signal, and the other sensors are, getting the reflected signal back. In that way, you can quite quickly scan through the chest to see if, the reflected signal is some kind of abnormal. And we tested this in an animal lab and see that it really works. You can actually detect injured lungs. So this is the results that we got. You can see this is the normal lung. These are all the reflected signals here on this graph. And as you can see here, is quite diversity between those two reflected signals, indicating that on the right side there's an injury. So this is new technology that we are pushing forward to get into the system. And the reason is that, it will be convenient if you can just strap a belt around the patient's chest and you can monitor the patient all the way into the hospital. If we look over at the last thing is the treatment part, okay, how can we treat these patients? The good thing, this is a study from Trondheim in Norway, where they looked at 436 chest injuries, and only 2 of them, actually 9 patients, needed full open surgery. So a lot of patients don't need to go to the OR and have open surgery. A lot of them can be treated only with chest drains or, simple maneuvers that can be done. So that's actually a good thing. And then I want to show you kind of 2 products that we have been working on in the Prometheus group, which is Pneumofix. And the Pneumofix is a specialized needle that you can insert into the chest cavity so you can actually evacuate air under tension. So if you look at this video, you have a pneumothorax on this side, and you can see air collects around the lung collapses, and you need to get that air out. And to be able to do that, you need to insert a needle into the chest. We will just go between the ribs and into the chest. And the design of this needle is in a way it's long enough, it's stiff enough to get in, and it also has a spring indicator, as you can see here, that is kind of loaded when you're inside the chest, and once you're inside, it will pop down, so it will give you kind of feedback when the needle is in the correct position. And once you're in position, air will be evacuated, and the patient will actually quite quickly start to improve. So this is, again, a life-saving maneuver if your lung is badly injured. And just to show you some more details behind that invention, because it looks simple, it's just a needle, it's plastic, but a lot of these parts are really, really, thorough designed behind. So when I got in contact with Dr. Russell, which is the CEO of the Prometheus Medical Limited, he wanted me to see if we can improve the needle a little bit. And be able to do so, I was actually doing a lot of study. Again, we used an animal model. And this is me showing a video where I'm filming inside the chest, and you can see that the needle comes in. So I can actually see that the spring function is working. It's working in real life. And we can see that it keeps open. There's nothing wrong with the needle inside. So we're kind of evaluating the effect that we are looking for. Again, another video showing the same. Here is the needle coming into the chest. This is the lung. And as you can see, once you remove the needle, this plastic tube will just be pushing the lung away. So you will not harm the lung in any way by having the needle inserted. And all these kinds of things gives us an idea that the product is actually working. But we also find some areas where we improve the product. So if you look at these 2 versions of the product, they look kind of the same, but if you study closely, you will see that we put a plastic cap on top. And the reason for that is that this is an open communication system. So there's an opening from here down through the needle and into the chest. And in the beginning, we felt, well, that doesn't matter. It's okay that it's open communication. But we found out if you, by harm, put in a needle on a lung that is not punctured, and that happens sometimes. You make a wrong diagnosis and you put a needle in where you're not supposed to put it in. You can actually make a harm with this needle by air being sucked into the chest. So you can see that on this video. You can actually see here we are putting in an open-end catheter, and actually you can see vapor coming and going, actually air being sucked into the chest if you keep a catheter open when you don't have a punctured lung. So that's why we went back to the drawing board and we made a new plastic cap that we put on top. And I think that shows some of the stages of innovation. This is a well-known product. It's been commercially available for some period, but actually now we updated it with a version 2.0 where we actually have new features coming into the product. And then it's the other issues when you have an opening, when you have an open pneumothorax where there is a hole through your chest wall. And if you look at this video, you can see that when you have that hole, air will actually be sucked into the chest. So instead of going through the normal airway, it will be sucked into the chest and the lung again collapses. So that greatly impairs your ability to ventilate and oxygenate. And that means that you need to put something over. And the development of what you see here, the Russell chest seal, actually solves this problem quite elegantly. Where you put on a chest seal, it works like a one-way valve system. So air will not be sucked into the chest, and excessive air will come out of the chest through this one-way valve system. Again, a quite simple innovation. We heard Dr. Russell's talk earlier where he explained the background of the idea. And this invention, has helped a lot of patients out in the field. And then we have, more serious injuries. We need to insert these chest tubes, which is larger plastic chest tubes. And we are currently working on some new innovation ideas to optimize that kind of treatments as well. So we have really focused on an important area where we are looking at chest injuries. So to sum up, this is actually a good comment. If you see here, are you a skeptic? Are you always skeptical to new technology? If you read this, you can see that this guy, Forbes, in 1823 said, "I'm extremely doubtful that it will ever come into general practice because it requires much time and gives a great deal of trouble for both the patient and the practitioner." And that was a comment to the stethoscope. There will always be people telling you that this will not work, but history again and again shows that there are always early adapters that takes the new technology and utilizes to optimize patient treatment. Thank you very much.